Hello and welcome to my presentation on the arts and crafts movement in the late 18th to 19th century Victorian era England. To begin, I want to give some historical context with the Industrial Revolution, as it was a major catalyst for the arts and crafts movement. So during the 18th century, significant changes in science, tech, and industry occurred, which resulted in the introduction of machines used for mass production. As a result of this, mass urbanization occurred as people migrated from rural areas to cities, which would have lasting social and economic effects, including child labor, pollution, and poor working conditions. But today I'm going to focus on this lower quality of goods that sparked intrigue towards the arts and crafts movement and allowed for this disenchantment that the focus was being placed on mechanized goods instead of handmade and higher quality artistry. There were also two other major groups that influenced the arts and crafts movement, including the Arts and Crafts Exhibition Society and the Pre-Raphaelites. The Arts and Crafts Exhibition Society was founded in 1887 by Walter Crane, and it just really emphasized these principles of decorative art and provided this platform for people to have conversation about it, such as the Great Exhibition of 1851. This is where William Morris first began to spread his ideology, and he was a major central figure in the arts and crafts movement. As well, the Pre-Raphaelites also influenced this movement as they broke away from traditional conventions, just like how the arts and crafts movement was a rebellion against industrialization. As we know from class, this brotherhood was established from 1847 to 1848, and it was compromised of many male poets and painters, but there were also some women involved, like Elizabeth Siddal and Christina Rossetti, who may not have been known to have as big of a role, but did play a big part, just like how women played a part in the arts and crafts movement, but may have not had as big of a name. There was also much poetry that was made during this time period that reflects these ideology, including Body's Beauty and In an Artist's Studio. Both of these poems were created by the Rossetti siblings, and they exemplifies this focus on female form and sensuality. Rossetti says this as he writes, draws men to watch the bright web she can weave till heart and body and life are in its holes. He explores these themes of temptation and beauty through this character, or this figure Lilith, who's this female temptress who uses her body to lure men in this scapegoat for male temptation. In an artist's studio, Christina Rossetti critiques this objectification and highlights this disconnect between male artists and their female muses, as she says, not as she is, but as she was when hope shone bright, not as she is, but as she fills his dream. So this dialogue around women in art was very crucial to this period. It broke away from old conventions, and it intertwines with the life of Jane Morris, William Morris's wife, who was not only a model for Rossetti, but also an accomplished artist in her own right. Here is Jane Morris. Here is a drawing of her created by Dante Gabriel Rossetti that portrays her in this very intimate setting with her hair down, kind of nodding towards the fact that they had an affair. Rossetti also poked fun at William Morris when he had Jane pose as Persephone for a piece, hinting that Jane was married to Hades, which is not a very kind reference, further hinting that there was an affair between them. Despite her affair in her husband's fame, Jane actually did create a lot of art in her own right, like embroidery, bookbinding, and calligraphy. Her art often included these natural themes, as can be seen here, and her art emphasized this changing tide of women creating and having influence within a craft alongside men, which was very important for the era. I have some further reading linked about her if anyone would like to check that out. As well, William Morris was her husband, and he was the main poet and artist associated with the arts and crafts movement. He passionately believed in creating these beautiful art and this return to small-scale workshops because he was very concerned with this disconnect between the maker and the product. He drew a lot of influence from these circles that I mentioned above, and his art was very known to be tied to nature themes. He emphasized this idea of art for art's sake, which I will explore more later, which is independent of all social values and simply meant to exist. This can be problematic, but Morris also founded his own firm. He revived the use of organic dyes and created poetry to express his sentiments. However, his art was often criticized because although he was attempting to make art for the people, it was often much too expensive for people to afford, limiting the movement from reaching outside of certain economic circles. These natural dyes and return to handmade goods can be seen in A Birthday by Christina Rossetti, as she says, hang it with rare and purple dyes, carve it in doves and pomegranates. So we can see how this artistry is seen in poetry. And also March by William Morris was a poem that has like a very gleeful tone to it, really just emphasizing that there was a lot of hope during this movement. Also, the Chaucer is another piece of art that William Morris created, which kind of just further shows that some of his art was only made for certain economic classes, as there was only 425 editions of this, so not everyone could enjoy this art. I also wanted to briefly speak on art for art's sake. I have some further reading linked below, but it's this philosophy that emphasizes that art should exist independently of political or moral affiliations, really just for beauty instead of function. This is emphasized by Oscar Wilde, who said, "All art is useless." He simply means that art is meant for aesthetic pleasure, which is the theme of the aesthetic movement, which was born out of the arts and crafts movement with the help of Walter Pater. While this can be very problematic, he also does say this quote that I really do think sums up the arts and crafts movement, as he says, "The critic is who can translate into another manner or a new material his impression of beautiful things." Ultimately, what Wilde is emphasizing is exactly what Morris and his peers stand for, as they critique the new to turn old ideas into newer and more meaningful ones. Ultimately, the impact of the arts and crafts movement happened urban and in rural settings, but it didn't really actually get very far because of the economic disconnect between what they were trying to do and what was actually completed. However, we still do have the art and poetry from this era to look back on, and some of the institutions that were established because of it. Thanks for listening.